How's it going, guys? It's Cass. As always, if you've been enjoying my content, then hit that subscribe button. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about Furious Gaze, and specifically going through some of the issues it has with it. Furious Gaze was added back to Demon Hunter in Shadowlands beta very late into the beta, so there wasn't really that much time that we had specifically to test it and to understand what it was actually in the for and the usages of it. The main issue with Furious Gaze currently is that it does not add together when used twice in a row. So when we think about every other demon hunter buff that we get, these add they extend whenever you use them twice. So for momentum, whenever I press Fel Rush twice in a row, it doubles and turns my 5-second cast from my first Fel Rush into 10 seconds whenever I cast my second Fel Rush. This also works with demonic whenever you press eyebeam. If you're already in metamorphosis, it just adds 6 seconds onto your metamorphosis. The main issue here is that with the new rank of metamorphosis, it makes it so it resets your eyebeam. And since Furious Gaze does not stack, it makes it so you either have to choose between delaying your eyebeam press or delaying your metamorphosis press, which both of them are pretty bad given the situation that your character's in. So this is what it will look like if you just press eyebeam, finish the full cast, you get the 11 seconds, then you meta, you eyebeam again, 7 seconds there, and then it just goes straight back to 12 instead of adding together. What this basically means is that we will have to obviously delay the amount of time that we have between our first eyebeam, our metamorphosis, and our second eyebeam in order to get as much uptime as Furious Gaze as possible. And that's just something that you would have to do if you're playing First Blood. But the main issue with having to play this way is that if you take Cycle of Hatred, it is inherently bad to play that way. And the design is actually just makes the talent worse than First Blood because of how they interact. Whenever you're playing Cycle of Hatred, Chaos Strikes, whenever they refund, they reduce the cooldown eyebeam by 3 seconds, which basically means that we want to constantly have our eyebeam on cooldown. So whenever we're pressing eyebeam, getting the first stacks here, or getting our first Furious Gaze, we want to be able to meta and then eyebeam again and get the Furious Gaze from that meta so we aren't losing out on it, while also being able to spend Fury on Chaos Strikes and reduce the cooldown of eyebeam overall. The first full eyebeam that we get and the eyebeam reset from Metamorphosis basically negates any of the refunds that we would have gotten with eyebeam or with our Chaos Strikes, making Cycle of Hatred just generally worse than First Blood. So I think a change to just make these two add on top of each other not only fits just the general concept of the class as a whole, whenever we think of metamorphosis adding whenever you're using demonic, and also the double stacking of momentum, it just makes sense to have these buffs stack on top of each other. It also will help just general class health, making Cycle of Hatred a little bit better in general, just because you don't have to worry about these issues. And next, I want to talk about the application of Furious Gaze in general. Having it directly related to finishing a cast of eyebeam is something that's not necessarily bad in PvE, but it's definitely something that has issues for demon hunters in PvP. In PvE, you can always time your eyebeams to situations in the fight where things aren't happening. This will make it so you won't have that many issues with finishing a cast of eyebeam, and you'll have as much Furious Gaze uptime as possible. However, PvP is a little bit different because when Demon Hunters being one of the more glass cannon-y classes currently in PvP, we are trained most of the time. This basically means that whenever we cast eyebeam, it's much more likely that it's going to be kicked when it's cast. And if they kick eyebeam, you don't get any benefit of Furious Gaze. I feel like this is just a double whammy that really wasn't intended, but is just currently happening, and something that a fix to how the application works would completely nullify. Because if we think about it, the reason why people are kicking eyebeam is to negate the damage and to lock us out of chaos damage. It's never, I don't think there's really anyone that either understands that kicking eyebeam is reducing the amount of haste that we're getting, or they're doing it specifically to make it so we don't get the haste from Furious Gaze. It's just, oh, they have nothing else to kick, so we're going to kick that to stop the damage in most situations. And I think that's something that it really shouldn't be the case. I don't think we should be punished that much for getting kicked in a situation where it's not like we can fake cast anything else that they're going to be trying to kick, because you can't kick the Hun, obviously, and that's really the only other thing that has a cast time. I would just like the application to be at the end of your eyebeam. That way, we don't have us losing out on the full benefit of Furious Gaze whenever we're also losing out on the full benefit of the chaos damage from eyebeam and being locked out of chaos damage after the fact. And while realistically, I would love for both of these changes to happen, the one main thing that needs to happen is they need to make Furious Gaze additive. They'll just generally make the health of the class better for the different talents that we can play, and also just make the class a lot more smooth in the opening phases of fights. As always, if you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't like the video, F5, refresh, try it again. Maybe you'll like it the second time. Have a good one.